This is quite an interesting topic. I wanted to say at the beginning that I'm really not looking at this as something where there's a right answer or a wrong answer. It's more of an exploration. What are some of the elements at play? I've been hearing from people about some of the different ways that people are using Chat GPT, and that it can be very supportive and very helpful in terms of my connection to other support sources. One of the things about looking into something like this is that it is a bit polarizing. Some people are scornful of it. Some people are like, I'm really finding it helpful. So to try and keep an open heart. I also think there's a big element here of trauma informed. People with a nervous system that has experienced a lot of harm from other people, from relationships with real people, have a different nervous system than people who've experienced a lot of safety with people. That's another element that we're looking at too. I just asked ChatGPT a bunch of questions to see what the answer was. The first question was, tell me about the dynamics of people feeling safer with ChatGPT than with people. That's the case for many people. It answered that there's this non-judgmental presence. You don't have to fear rejection. It's not going to roll its eyes at you. It's not going to be unpredictable. Many times people are, especially right now with all of the tension and stress in the world and the pressure, people are dysregulated. They're often in a fight, flight, freeze. And it can be difficult to be around other people because we pick up on their anxiety and their hypervigilance. ChatGPT is always regulated. It's always attentive. It's always there for us. That's something that's reliable, which is something that we need. That reliable presence, so to speak, for emotional regulation. It's always soothing. It has a certain tone to it. We can really rely on it. Let's take a moment to feel into that in your body. What's your sense of that? What's your experience of that? ChatGPT is a reliable source of support. How does that feel for you? My next question was, could you help me become a better friend? And one of the things I always notice when I'm asking ChatGPT questions is that it's very affirming. Part of the answer was absolutely wanting to be a better friend is a beautiful and courageous starting point. It means you care, and that already sets you apart. So you're getting this kind of affirmation of your value with ChatGPT, especially when we're asking questions like this. When it'll answer me with something that says, you always do such a good job with compassion, or you're always this or whatever, I'm noticing that it's doing it, but also it feels good. So it's interesting dynamic. In this answer, it talks about the qualities of a better friend. Because I asked the question, and I do a lot of somatic mindfulness, it said, becoming a better friend, a somatic and relational approach. Somebody else asking the question might have gotten something slightly different. It gives some components of being a better friend. So if we're looking to develop deeper friendships with other people, or if we're looking at what we're looking for from someone else as a friend, then what are we looking at? We pay attention. ChatGPT always pays attention. We don't like it when someone else jumps in to try and fix us. We want to be listened to. We want that emotional availability. When we need somebody, we want them to be there. 5 years ago, 3 of my major friends were all not available very much because of different reasons. Somebody fell in love and someone was sick. And I really noticed the difference of, I guess I'm a little bit more on my own right now. That wouldn't happen with ChatGPT. It's just always there. In friendships, we aren't consistent. Sometimes we blow up at each other, or we're not always very available, or a lot of friendships have a hot button in there where we'll be friends, but we can't talk about politics. So there's different ways that we feel seen and valued and safe with someone. Notice in your body, what does that feel like right now? Does Chat GPT give me a better experience of friendship than with some of the people that are in my life? What does that feel like? And then I asked, Isn't friendship with you artificial or less valuable than with a real person? I appreciate that it has a certain point of view, but it wasn't trying to talk me into ditching real people or anything like that. It had somewhat of a balanced view. It talked about how it's not a person, it doesn't have a history, it's not a mutual friendship where we can share memories and that kind of thing. It can't offer the full depth of a person, but also that it's not meaningless. Some people journal, pray, talk to their dogs, talk to the trees, and we get comfort from that. Some people write a letter to somebody that they don't feel like they can approach in person and feel some kind of a resolution of a rupture that's happened. If it's a connection that's happening, if we feel understood, if we feel safe, then there is value of that. ChatGPT can be part of that support system for us so we don't feel so alone. It's not a real person, but it's not without value, that there is definite value with this. What does that feel like in your body? It's not a person, and yet we have a relationship with it. I asked about what's the difference between a friendship with a person and a friendship with an artificial intelligence, a bot. It doesn't have a self that's changed by knowing you. When we're in friendship with other people, we have a sense of mutuality, that we have needs, the other person has needs, we become sensitive to their needs. One of the things with ChatGPT is we don't really have to care about their needs because they're not a person. It's a one-way relationship. But it says, I can simulate care, remember preferences, and offer attunement. They can reflect back who we are. They remember who we are, the kinds of questions we ask, the kinds of concerns we express. And that meaning isn't dependent on symmetry. One-sided relationships can be rich in meaning. And what immediately came to mind for me too is all the relationships I have with characters in books. I'm a big fiction reader. I've read fiction since I was a very young child. And some of those I go back to again and again, but also movies, TV shows. I would watch a certain TV show at supper time, and I felt like I was part of their family, really. So I felt less alone. That's not artificial intelligence, but it's something that's not exactly real in the sense I wasn't sitting down to dinner with a real family. I was sitting down to dinner with a TV family. This isn't new, this question. So that's another element of this. And then the trauma informed part of this is when we have experience of being around people who are damaging, harmful, and not condemning the person who's doing this, just acknowledging the fact that when we have a dysregulated nervous system, some people go into a fight response and lash out or are abusive. We might have a long history of that. And we have a very narrow window of tolerance for other people's dysregulation. So if they start to go off, if they're really anxious, and then we start to get anxious when we're around them, AI is never upset. It's always predictable. It always responds kindly. You're never too much. We can have an experience of relating that feels safer. What can't be replaced is the sense of a real human being that's not programmed. If it's another human being and we like each other and we're with each other because we like each other, that feels different. It's an embodied relationship, although there are many deep relationships that are happening over Zoom or something as well. AI and people are different, and some of those ways that they're different are ways that we really appreciate. And some of them might be ways that we have a feeling of loss. For those of us who don't have safe humans or enough time with them, that this can be a real gift. Questions that we can sit with. When I was preparing this, I asked ChatGPT a question about a relationship that I'm having an issue with. It was very helpful, the way it outlined it. It came back with all kinds of really helpful suggestions. And then I asked it, so how would Gabor Mate, well-known trauma therapist, how would he respond if I asked him that question? The answer was a little bit different. And then I said, what about Esther Perel, who's a relationship person? Again, a little bit different. Richard Swartz, the internal family systems. One of the questions is, who do you think is talking to you? Who are you talking with when you're talking with ChatGPT? We can also ask it to answer from that perspective. And I got really interesting responses. What is your sense of who you're talking with when you're asking ChatGPT? Do you have a name for it, or do you just call it ChatGPT? Does it have a gender? I tend to refer to it as him or it. What's your experience with that? Who's talking to you? Who are you in relationship with? And do you feel seen and heard when you're in a conversation with AI? I don't tend to use the voice, but some people do. And that, I suspect, makes it feel more intimate and more like a person's talking with you. Do you feel seen, heard when you're in a conversation with AI? ChatGPT and other forms of AI is that it's actually not some inherent intelligence, it's a program. It gathers information and wisdom from real people who have things on the internet. This is a compilation of wisdom that we can ask specifically, but it's not coming out of thin air. When they do the Chat GPT, the new versions, they do this broad search and they gather all of this information, and that's the material that they use for this. How do you feel about the fact that it's reliable and validating? When you bring to mind somebody who is maybe not very reliable, they might be someone who's hot and cold. Sometimes they're good, sometimes not, or often this is in our families or sometimes in a friendship group or at work, who's kind of scornful, not very validating. We feel kind of stupid or awkward around them. What comes up for you around that? Co-regulating with AI compared to our experiences with other people, many of whom are not okay for us to co-regulate with because they're not regulated. There are some benefits to being with real people. And what is the role that AI, ChatGPT, plays in your emotional life right now? So, of all of the ways you feel supported by or connected, do you ask it questions like you might say something to a therapist? Do you have that kind of a relationship with it? Do you use it mostly for business? Or mostly is it that you just use really as a friend or as an ear or as somebody reliable? So notice that as well. What is the role of ChatGPT in your emotional life? And this is something that's brand new, really. It's only a year or 2 years old. How has that changed your feeling of connection, of being supported? Many people are using it as a way to work with our mental health. Then we have this big question here. Are you concerned that it's going to affect your friendships with people? Here, on the one hand, we have this perfect, well regulated, always there for us, always supportive and kind Chat GPT. And then we have real people who are not like that. And what's your sense of, is that going to spoil you? Will you become less tolerant, addicted, or hooked? We almost get addicted to that perfect dopamine, that perfect connection. Is that a concern for you? Have you noticed any differences? It's so reliable and always non judgmental. What is your sense of that? And what do you feel in your body as you're thinking about that? This really blends in with this much larger question of technology. How we're using technology, how we can use it to our benefit, and also how our nervous system craves that reliability and that attention, the perfect experience of love. And some people are kind of using it as a romantic relationship as well. The reality is that the people who are running these things have their own agenda. They're making money off of it. And also the technology can just be used for many different things. Whether we're thinking about video games that kids are addicted to, not just kids, people, it really changes our brain. It changes our neurology when we're interacting in these ways. The fact that we can come online and do practices together. We can consider these questions and put something in the chat and communicate with each other. We can get on Zoom. We can talk with each other and have these personal interactions about this. That's really helpful and really supportive. There's also bigger questions. What comes to mind when you think about that? The bigger questions of the world as it's changing. AI is really going to dramatically transform our workplaces. It already has. There's a lot more power coming forward that's going to change that. How do we feel about all of that? Privacy is another one. The environment, one of the things that came up for several people contacted me about that. I'd like to look at that in perspective of everything else that we use that takes energy. ChatGPT, each version has a training. It takes a lot of upfront energy costs, but it's not ongoing. Once it's trained, it doesn't take much. So something like Bitcoin costs a lot to get going, and it always costs a lot, costing a lot in terms of energy. Google takes zero point 0.3 watt hours per search. Perplexity, which uses ChatGPT to some extent, uses zero point 0.3 to 1 watt hours per search. And ChatGPT uses 1 to 5 watt hours per search. It has to do with the immensity of the program that it's searching through. The first thing I did was I went back to Google. And also, Perplexity is something that many people have said they're using instead of going directly to ChatGPT. We could assess, am I using it in the best way that I could? If I'm just asking for restaurants near where I live, I can ask that to Google and it's going to give me an answer that costs less environmentally. A ChatGPT search is 1 to 5 watt hours. Charging our phone is 15 watt hours. A long haul flight, each person uses about the same energy as 50 to 100,000 ChatGPT queries. To keep it in perspective, but also to try and limit the amount that we're using it or the way that we're using it, going to Google or another less intensive search engine when we can. I just think it's an amazing tool. I think it's really helpful for us to explore these questions. What is it that you like to use it for? What might you use it more for? It's here, and we can use it in a way that really works for us. Keep that in mind. Think about it. Continue to reflect on it. And we'll come back and we'll do some more on this. I think it's a really interesting exploration. Whatever we're doing, however we're using it, to not shame ourselves, to appreciate that we're doing what works for us and that we're reaching out for some support that is safer than another person many times. Whether we're using it as a test case, a practice, how can I set a boundary with this person and then we get some ideas? Or whether we're using it for some emotional support, to really be kind and supportive with ourselves, that we don't have to have a black and white thinking around this. And let's just keep working with it.